Hey guys, it's Amy here, Centre Director of New Me for Christ, bringing you today's Life Words video. Our passage today is Mark chapter 12, verses 35 to 44. And there's loads of interesting things for us to unpack together today. Now, at the crux of it is this idea that perhaps the ways of the Lord, God's ways, are not always the same as what the world is suggesting to us. We need to think carefully around what logic we're listening to, about who we're following and chasing after, and what our approach to money is. Let's jump into some of this together. See, the passage starts off with Jesus teaching, and actually he's dealing with some confusion around some questions about him. See, people are saying, how can the scribes be saying that the Christ is the son of David when David himself called the Lord his Lord? See, there's a question of succession or what's happening. How can the Christ who is coming now be the Lord of someone who lived so long ago? How can the Lord be his son? It doesn't seem to make sense in human terms. And yet Jesus seems to leave the questions hanging in the air because Jesus is exactly who he says he is. The promises of the Old Testament are fulfilled in Jesus. David, writing in the Old Testament, looked forward in God's timing that one day the Messiah would come. The Messiah coming from the line of David, so would be a son of David, albeit through many generations. The promises made about Jesus in the Old Testament come true in Jesus. We can trust in what God says. We don't need to get caught up in some of the questions of trying to use earthly understanding to try and get our heads around what it is that God does. Instead, we can take his word as true. We can trust it. The promises of God come to pass. And then there's this interesting passage because Jesus says to the crowd, you really need to be wary of the scribes, the teachers of the law, these pesky Pharisees that keep coming up. See, Jesus says the Pharisees, they're always looking for your attention. They want to be greeted in the marketplace. They want the best seats at the fanciest restaurants. They say these long prayers to impress you. But actually underneath it all, their hearts are hard. They seem to be following the ways of the Lord, but actually on the inside, they're so far away from what they need to be. They look impressive, they sound impressive, but underneath it all, they're nothing more than hypocrites. Who are the people that we think are impressive today? Who are the people we're tempted to follow? Who is the loudest voices? Who is the most followers on social media? Who seems to be saying the things that everybody else is listening to? Jesus encourages us today, watch out for the people that seem to be leading others. Are they really the best people for you to be following? Are they really the right people for you to be trusting and listening to? Instead, who might you want to listen to instead? What is Jesus offering as guidance for your life? Who are the people that are encouraging you to be the people you were created to be? And then finally, there's this interesting passage because Jesus and the disciples are sitting in the temple and they're watching people put their money in the collection pot. Now, rich people come and they put in impressive amounts of money, but they're not the people that catches Jesus' eye. Instead, his eye is caught by a poor widow who's putting in 2 pennies. A widow who is poor, putting in money out of her poverty, giving sacrificially to the King of Kings. Now, I don't know about you, but sometimes I get annoyed at different charity things when really rich people come along and tell us about how much money they've given to things. You see, if you're a footballer, a couple of £1,000 isn't a lot of money if you get paid hundreds of thousands of pounds a week. But for everyone else, that would be a considerable gift. But actually, giving comes from a place where it makes sense around how much other money you have. See, the rich people in the story gave lots of money, but it wasn't impressive to Jesus. What was impressive was this lady who gave out of the little she had. It cost her to give to the Lord, but she did so joyfully and willfully. You know, sometimes we worry about what difference would my small offering have to make, either financially or in terms of our talents. What difference would my words make? But Jesus encourages us today that God sees the heart. He sees the sacrifice. What might you have to give to Jesus today? Even the smallest things in his hands can move mountains and do miracles. What do you need to trust him with today? Your money? Your talents? Your future? Your questions? Why not bring them to Jesus today? Who are you following? What questions and logic are you applying rather than trusting that God is who He says He is? And what today might you need to offer to the King of Kings and Lord of Lords? What might you have to put into God's hands for Him to use? Guys, check the passage out for yourself, and we'll see you again tomorrow for the next part of our journey through Mark together. Have a brilliant day. See you soon.